Welcome to the WordPress Photography Podcast, the podcast for photographers who want to learn how to get the most out of WordPress to grow their photography business. You don't need to be a geek to understand WordPress. Settle back and listen as we show you how. Now, here's your host, Scott Wyden-Kivowitz.
Welcome to episode 132. My name is Scott Wyden-Kivowitz, and I'm joined by my guest, Joseph Cristina. Joseph has spent over 20 years as an innovator, author, director of photography, and professional photographer. He has created some incredible products over the years, like the Focus Pyramid autofocus lens calibration tool, the PRT photo reference tool, color calibration tool, Aurora camera care, camera sensor, and lens cleaning kits, and other photo video related tools. Most recently, he published How to Create a Digital Fort Knox, Backing Up Your Digital Life, which we will be digging into in this episode. So, with that said, welcome to the show, Joseph.
Thank you very much for having me. It's awesome being here.
Yeah. So you and I have known each other for a long time.
A long time. I know we were working the circuit, right? We went from, I think it was WPPI, Photo Plus Expo, the different shows, as well as online. And it has to be it's definitely over 10 years. Definitely over 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, we first started chatting when I was working at Macworld by Warranty, which was about 17 or 18 years ago. So, it's absolutely insane.
All right.
I'm actually shocked that it took me this long to get you on the show, but it's funny though, because like it just worked out perfect, because we literally got this question from someone in the Imagely community about, like, not a question so much as like, can you please talk about this?
Right.
And we asked about their fears that they have, and the fear was loss of data. I fear bad, unpredictable weather, right? And it's like, you came out with this book, and the timing just, it just worked out so well. So,
yeah,
obviously, what we're talking about
unpredictable
is
weather. Unpredictable weather down here in South Florida is basically, that's all that we get, right? We have the hurricanes and all the rest of the stuff.
Yeah.
But
in Florida, you've got like, it's like every day, every hour for you is unpredictable weather.
Yeah, exactly. Should I go on a bike ride? Yeah, probably not. And you just look outside, and that's your weather. Because if you consult the weather report, it's never right anyways. So you just look outside, and that's basically what you get. But as creatives like you and I are, and most of the people that are listening out there are some type of creative. It doesn't matter if you're doing photo or video or whatever the content is. We need to be able to back up our data. And that was one of the things that I had the hardest time doing. And for many years, I wasn't doing it the way I supposed to do it, so to speak, using that 3-2-1 backup strategy that everyone knows about, where you have live data, archival data, you have your cold storage data, and then, of course, you have double of, let's say, you have something on an SD as well as a hard drive or whatever. So you have on multiple formats and in different locations. And I wasn't doing that. And it got to be a little bit scary, just like, one of your listeners was talking about. It's one of those things that you don't know if it's going to be there later, number one. But number two, when you're doing this professionally, it's not just your data that you're losing. You could possibly lose your client's data. And at that point, all of a sudden, we're into lawsuit problems and a lot of other issues. So that was the biggest thing. Yeah. But as creatives, when we started this, what we were saying 17 years ago, a 10 megapixel camera was like a big thing. Now they went from 10 megapixels. Now we're seeing, Fuji's up to 100 megapixels, some medium format. I mean, video was, 480, then 720, then 1080p. That was like the big thing. And then finally 4K, we're going to be going to 8K soon. So these files are getting larger and larger and larger. And it's like, what the hell do you do with them? So, for me, Scott, it was a lot of what I did was put them on these external drives that look like this. You remember, I'm sure these big, massive things, right? And I literally have stacks and stacks of them. And the problem is search and rescue. Like, where is everything? Even if you wrote on those drives, let's say the year, or sometimes I would do the client and all, it's like, still, where is it? And then if you wanted to take the data off, it's through USB or whatever, and it's slow. So I was looking for an alternative, and that was where it all started, I guess.
Did you have any data loss that well, first here's the cover of your book. This is your book.
Yes.
That is very detailed, actually goes through step by step on how to actually create a really
like an unraid server,
powerful,
basically.
Yeah. So did you have actual loss that drove you to create this book and to rebuild, make your own backup system?
Yeah.
Or was it just the fact that you didn't have a good backup system and you wanted to do it?
Well, I got lucky. I did have a loss, but luckily I had a backup still. And all of these drives, like I was showing you, we even had some bare bones stacked up, like probably 30, 40 of them, of the drives. But what ended up happening was I ended up going to a RAID array type of setup, where I bought this off the shelf NAS, which is the network drive, basically, where you store all of your data in. I bought it off the shelf, and the problem is with network attached storage, it still was slow getting it to it, but I did do it, and I loaded all of it took literally weeks, Scott, to load all of my files, video and photos, to that NAS drive. And in under, I think just over 6 months, let's call it under a year, that drive had a failure. And what a lot of people don't know is if you have one of these drives and it's RAID array, and there's, let's say, 5 drives in it, you can go more, but let's say it's 5 drives in it. If you lose one drive, it's okay. If you lose 2 drives, it's not so okay. So what ended up happening was one drive went bad. It sends out an email to me saying one of your drives is bad. It has a little red sticker. I'm not going to say which backup company this was with, but I'm sure you guys can look up. There's only a few out there, but it said that the drive is bad. So I ordered on Amazon a new drive to replace it. And with a RAID array, basically you replace the drive, and in the background, it slowly rebuilds all of that data that's on that drive that was lost. The problem was, before the Amazon package came to me with the secondary drive, with the replacement drive, a secondary drive went bad. And when that happens with a RAID array, with a RAID 5, you lose everything. So the entire thing was corrupt at that point because I lost the second drive. And a lot of people are like, how do you lose 2 drives? That's like lightning striking twice. Well, lightning sometimes does strike twice, but what ends up happening a lot of times is with these over-the-counter or off-the-shelf NAS backup units, is they buy in drives to put in them, all from the same company. Let's say it's Samsung, and they're all serialized. So it's like, let's say drive 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And when they're building them, your drive has drive 5 through 10, and they're all in there. Same company, same serial, same lot, different serial, but all sequential, same lot. So if that lot was a bad lot, the chances of you having a multiple failure occur is highly more probable than if you got drives from all over the place from different companies and whatnot. So that's exactly what happened. Drive died, and the entire NAS, that network attached storage device, that appliance, was bad. And I ended up having to go and get all of these drives once again. Now, thank God I didn't delete them all. I still had them. And I only lost a couple of months worth of data, which was still a lot at the time because I wasn't backing up stuff the way I should. That was bad on me. But I only lost a little bit, but I still had, decades of data, which was really good. And that's when I kind of got into, what do I do? Do I go to cloud storage? And I know you, I'm sure, and a lot of other people look at, Backblaze and a lot of different cloud storage options out there. Should I do that? But for me, I didn't have such a robust uploading speed, let's say, if I didn't have gigabit. And to be able to put our crucial data, especially when it comes to videos, into the cloud is basically impossible, number one. But number two, the problem that I was seeing was that there was manufacturers out there of cloud that had cloud storage that were losing people's data. And I know Canon, there's a lot of other companies that, even like camera manufacturers like them that lost tons of data, like for a full week. Everything that was uploaded, gone, just literally vaporized. And all of that, it could be weddings, it could be important, whatever. It's literally all gone with no way of getting back. And I said, I need to be in control over my data and my clients' data. As a DP, we're doing editing. I have a team. There's stuff that goes on. I cannot lose that stuff, number one. Number two, I still need to have a copy local. So if something goes wrong and I need a file, I don't need to rely on the internet to get that file back. Because if, let's say, the internet goes down, you're dead in the water too. You can't even get your data back. And that's when I got into the possibility of going with something else. And that's when I found Unraid in comparison to Raid and building my own.
Yeah. So you've touched on a lot of points. I want to break down some of these before we keep going. So first, NAS, so network attached storage. These are devices that offer a RAID system, but they connect to the internet, and really you're transferring your files, your data through the internet. You can plug in a USB, but for the most part, most of it's going and being received and sent through the internet. And for everybody who's listening, you probably heard of companies like Synology, like QNAP, even Drobo, who was very, very big in the photo industry for a long time, has a NAS version, and then they have their Thunderbolt versions. Then there's also people who have, make their own homemade versions, sort of like what Joseph has done for his Unraid server, which you'll hear about further. But so a RAID, let's dig into now RAID, because RAID and NAS, they're actually two separate things.
Right.
But a NAS is also a RAID. So it's kind of like it gets a little confusing, I think. For people.
And as you were saying, so with the RAID, NAS, though, the NAS can go through the internet, but it can go through your local intranet also. So that's the thing with the NAS. You can either connect it to the internet, or you can leave it offline and just do it inner office, let's say, with your NAS. Either way,
correct. Yep. Which would require hardwiring with an Ethernet cable, not just using Wi-Fi in general. The Wi-Fi versions are not very good.
No,
I could tell you from firsthand experience. So a RAID is basically a hard drive or a series of hard drives that are either copied, so you've got multiple disks that are copied, clones, or they're what's called striped, where it's sending data to multiple in pieces, or there's even RAIDs that do a combination of clones and stripes to even further expand on the capabilities and safeguards that are in place. And there are a ton, like I mentioned, there are a ton of different companies who make it. I mean, Western Digital, G Technologies, who is now actually part of SanDisk and Western Digital. There's so many companies, Lacey, so many companies that make these. And so before we dive into what Unraid is, though, I want to just mention that or I should say, before we dive into the difference between RAID and Unraid, I want to mention what my backup workflow is. I eventually plan to switch to an Unraid backup as I have time and as I can, buy the components and stuff like that.
Right.
But in the meantime, my backup system is currently, I've got my entire collection on a G Technologies RAID Thunderbolt hard drive. It's basically a multiple hard drives in one device, and it's Thunderbolt directly into my computer. That is where majority of my photography, or all my photography rather, is sits. And some of my videos, my personal YouTube stuff, I don't keep every single thing, unlike a lot of other YouTubers do. So I don't have tons of B-roll. I keep specific B-roll, but I don't have tons. And so I've got this master RAID drive, basically, that is where everything sits. And then I use, I'm a Mac user, so I use Carbon Copy Cloner, which is a Mac app that allows me to clone a drive by either removing files or adding files, depending on what happened to the master drive. So I've got the same exact hardware, literally the same size, same style, but I bought it like 3 months apart. So they're not the same. They're not, the same, made at the same time and things like that. Yeah, and I have that literally right next to it, and every single day, Carbon Copy Cloner says, "Oh, this changed. Let me update, the clone." So now the clone matches the original. And then I have another one that, again, bought 3 months later. That's actually at my in-laws' house in town, but not close enough that if there was a fire here, God forbid, knock on wood, that I would lose anything. But once a month, I pick that up from them, bring it home, and Carbon Copy Cloner says, "Oh, a lot has changed," and then it does the update, and then I have to lug it back to their house and store it safely at their house again. So that's like the physical backups I have. And then I have Backblaze, like you mentioned. I use Backblaze to back up all of my my files from that master RAID drive. And then at the same time, I also use Amazon Photos as a Prime member. Everything is saved as a JPEG as well, sent to Amazon Photos, just as like a last resort. Hey, look, I still have this, but Backblaze is really good enough so what Backblaze allows you to do is if you do lose everything, even though it's in their cloud, you can download your files, or you can actually request for hard drives to be sent to you, and they'll actually ship you a drive where you can then offload all of your, your stuff without having to download it through the internet. So it's a really nice thing that they offer, really nice service. But that's the majority. I mean, there's also something I used to do. I don't do it anymore, which was using Amazon Glacier. But I figured it was kind of redundant to having Backblaze's redundancy in place.
Right. Yeah.
So,
I mean, you're covered. Like you were saying, there's so many Lacey, there's Synology, QNAP, there's Drobo. Yeah. And like you were talking about Drobo, there was a lot of photographers using Drobo. And the problem that I've always had with the over-the-counter stuff, so like a Drobo or anything like that, is they're very proprietary. So if there's an issue, you need to get a hold of them and they need to send you a fix, whatever that fix is. You're not in there getting that data out yourself. And I always have a problem with that because God forbid, like one of these companies go out of business, or let's say you're in your appliance, like your RAID array appliance, and the actual card in there, your NIC, goes bad. Well, it's a simple swap, but if the company is out of business, now what do you do? And now how do you get your data out? Well, hopefully you can still get it out through USB or through Thunderbolt or through whatever. It's always an issue for me when you go with these over-the-counter type of, off the shelf, because there can be problems. And what I was reporting on, on my show, is that there was, we're not going to say which company, but there was a very large company, one of them that I just named, that actually got hacked. And a lot of the people that were using their drives and using them exposed to the internet, like we were talking about just momentarily, just moments ago, they now had all of their data locked through like a ransomware type of attack, and they could not access their data anymore. That was it. Even though it was in their studio, it came in through, let's call it the cloud or whatever, it came through the internet, locked it all up, and that was it. So there's always issues whenever you go with that third party or with that over the counter or off the shelf in comparison to doing your own. When you do your own, you're getting two things out of it. Number one, you get to do whatever you want with it, put whatever into it that you want, spend as much as you want, whatever you want to do, expand it however you want, but also you have that knowledge to fix something. And that is so, to me, so important, because especially today, you don't know, companies, they come and they go. And then what happens a lot of times is then not just do they get, let's say, hacked, but now all of a sudden you have a service that just goes, the wayside somewhere. And now, we're not offering that specific cloud storage anymore, but you can move to this, or we're not offering it at all anymore. And you have 3 weeks to take your, 80 terabytes of data off it. And you're like, how in the hell am I going to do that? So,
yeah. Well, I mean, look at Google Photos, right? Google Photos was telling people upload your full resolution, including raw files, to Google Photos. And then like that, they did the typical Google thing and said, sorry, we're now charging for everything you upload starting June 1st, 2021. And then everybody's like, so that sucks.
Yeah, download everything if you want.
They weren't removing so they weren't removing everything from the past, but anything new would go against your Google storage limit. So
yeah, it makes it difficult.
but that's a good example of
Right.
of what can
And
happen.
like you were saying, how
yeah.
like these appliances, when we're talking about RAID and you were explaining it and you did a fantastic job, basically you have either cloning going on inside of them where it's like all mirror backups, or you have something where you're actually having, let's say, one drive sliced, let's call them into little slices, so that two drives, just imagine two drives writing all of the data instead of to one drive and then filling it and then moving it to the next. Imagine if it writes your data continuously back and forth, back and forth, back and forth between two drives. What happens when you do that is you have a greater speed of input and output. Your read-write speeds go up by doing it. But what also happens is the side effect is if one goes bad, you have a problem because you have to rebuild that one. But if that second drive goes bad, you lose everything. And that was the problem with RAID array, where, with the RAID 5, for example, whereas with unRAID, it's not like that. Let me give you a couple pros and cons here. So
well, so you talk about so page 7 of your book, you start getting into what unRAID is. So before you dig into some of the technical stuff of unRAID, what exactly is unRAID compared to RAID?
Yeah, so they're very, very similar, but the main difference between the RAID and the unRAID is that when you're dealing with a RAID setup, they're doing, like you were saying, you're either mirroring things up or you're going to set it up so that you are going between drives, okay, to speed things up. Unraid does not do that at all. You set up let's say a float point, how far a drive fills before it now switches to the next drive and fills, switches to the next drive and fills. And then once it gets to the very end of all the drives in there, it starts back in the beginning and starts filling like this. So you can set that up however you want to. But what ends up happening is you don't have that slicing that between, so you're not getting any of the speed. So one of the cons, let's just say, with unRAID is it's a little bit slower, but it is archival. It's not really for live working with your data. So it's archival. So the speed is a con, but it's not always a con either because it's archival. So, but that's the main difference between the two, is how it's actually storing your data in comparison to anything else. The actual system itself is done in such a way that a perfect example is if you had a 5-drive RAID array like you have, let's say, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be Drobo, it could be one of the Synologies, QNAP, whatever. You have 5. Yeah. 2 drives go bad and you lose everything. The way unRAID works is since they're all separated, if 2 drives were to go bad, okay, you will still be able to access all of your data, every single bit of the 3 drives that are still left. So that was something for me that was a really big thing. Now, if you did lose 1 drive in an unRAID server, right, you pull the 1 drive out, you stick a new one in, and it will rebuild it. Okay. Now, obviously, if you lose 2, it's not going to be rebuilding unless you have multiple drives. That's all they do within there. Now, these drives, I'll get into them in just a second, but you have a single drive that is called a parity drive. Now, it's a kind of a crazy name, but just think about it. Parity, what parity is. And what that does is it keeps all of the information on that one drive that it needs to rebuild all the rest. So if you want to be able to lose 2 drives in your unRAID, you put 2 parity drives in it. Now you don't have a problem, So you can do things like that also with unRAID, but the big thing is you don't have to worry about losing everything. The one other thing that you need to bear in mind is when you build an unRAID server, the parity drives need to be equal or larger than every other drive. Now, some of if you were to build or if you got a NAS from someone, you'll see that, let's say it's 8 gig drive, and they're saying, an 8 terabyte drive, and they're saying, well, you're going to get 32 terabytes out of it because of this, that, whatever, or whatever the number is. You have 8 terabyte, 8 terabyte, 8, 8, 8, 8, and that's how it is. And when you build them, always with RAID, that's how it always has been. You have to have the exact same drive replicated. With unRAID, you don't. Right. So what that means is I can pull drives out of here. I can pull drives out of there. I can take a bare bones from here. I could take a 4 terabyte, an 8 terabyte, a 12 terabyte. and throw them all into the system. And it's just going to understand that they're just more data storage, more storage. And the only thing, once again, is that parity drive needs to be the largest of all of them or equal on par. So if you wanted to build something that has, let's say, for me, if let's say you have 5 drives and if you have 8, let's say 8 terabyte drives, well, you could have a 2, a 4, a 6, an 8. But if you want to go to a 10 terabyte to stick it in there, you need to have a 10 terabyte parity drive. And that's really about it. There's not a lot to it, let's just say. It's very basic, but it does an amazing job at what it does, basically.
Yeah. I would say, so like to simplify, making it the numbers even easier for everybody to understand. So let's say your Unraid server has 5 working drives, right, where all your data is being split up. And 4 of those drives are 1 terabyte drives, right? The 5th drive is a 2 terabyte drive. So you've got that like bucket filled between drives is basically 1 terabyte, 1 terabyte, 1 terabyte, 1 terabyte, 2 terabytes. You've got 6 terabytes overall of your workable data that's being split up. Your parity drive has to be 6 terabytes, or they don't make 7s, 8 terabytes. Has to be the same or more than what those workable drives are combined.
And the beauty behind that is the parity drive only needs to be as big or bigger than your largest drive, not all of them. So if I have 10 terabyte drives and I have 10 and 10 and 10 and 10 and 10, right? And I have a 10 terabyte parity. If I said, well, now there's 16 terabyte drives out there, I want to bring in and start swapping out for my 10 terabytes to 16 because I want more storage. As soon as I pull one of those out to put a 16 in, I need to put also a 16 in the parity, because the parity is the one that keeps track of everything that's going on. So it doesn't matter. It's not the total amount. It's just the largest drive that you stick into it. So what that means, if you stuck in a 16 terabyte parity drive, you can stick in a 1 terabyte, you can stick in an 8 terabyte, you can stick in a 12 terabyte, and you could even stick in a 16 terabyte, but you cannot stick in an 18 terabyte. To do that, you'd have to replace your parity drive. That's basically it. Very, very, simple.
Okay. So how does it, how does it know if you've got 16 terabytes of workable storage and your largest hard drive is 8 terabytes, let's say. So you put in an 8 terabyte drive, but you've got 16 terabytes of data. And how does it know how is it
basically, how is it backing it up? How is it going to rebuild that? I'm not a technologist that gets into all of the ones and zeros, but basically that's what it is. It is literally looking at all of the ones and zeros of the different drives and calculating that out. So for example, if a drive has 16 ones and then it has 22 zeros, it's going to remember and write down 16 ones, 22 zeros, and that's it. It's not going to write all that data down. So it's kind of like that. I don't know the whole process on how they do it, but that is kind of how it is thought of. And that's why you just need the largest drive that you can, or how you want to move forward with parity. And then you can basically pull out any drive. It doesn't matter what it is. And that parity drive will rebuild it. And if you want to have the ability to pull out 2 drives in case of double failure, like what I had, then you would have 2 parity drives and you would stick 2 in there instead of only 1. And that was one of the things that was really good for me, because I'm like, I don't want to go and buy all of these. I have so many, literally stacks of drives, right? Stacks of bare bone drives. Why do I want to go buy like a whole, like 5, 10 new drives and all of this money out? Why don't I just stick in everything that I have? Yeah. And that's basically what we did. I literally built this Unraid server in a weekend with 10-year-old parts out of my garage. and it's still running literally a year and a half later. And I think it's a Core Duo or something. I don't know. The processor is like as slow as in molasses. And it doesn't matter because you don't need a lot of power. You can literally repurpose an old computer and just give it a lot of hard drive, a room, let's say a full size box, and you're good to go.
So that was actually the last thing I wanted to talk about today was okay. So page 34 of your book, you've got a parts checklist, and you actually go over literally the machines and parts that you used from your garage or wherever you got it from. Right?
This
you literally
because you're not going to find any of this crap because it's literally 10-year-old stuff. But I did that as a way to say, look, this is what I used. Use something definitely better, but you don't need to. You really don't need to.
Yeah. So this is where if you go and buy a Synology RAID, and which, by the way, doesn't come with hard drives. You now have to buy the hard drive separate. You go and buy a G technology that has enough storage and enough, of the clone drives to make it a large RAID drive, plus your backup. That it adds up. In theory, you could build an Unraid server, maybe a little cheaper, maybe the same price, maybe in some cases, depending on the parts, a little more expensive. But you could do it yourself. And I'm wondering, I know that you actually recommend what people should, potentially try or whatever, look at. But if you were to just Google pre-built Unraid server, you're not finding affordable, quote unquote, pre-built. You're finding like rack-mounted, full-on servers. You're not finding a computer case that has been converted. I'm wondering if you could share, not necessarily, your garage parts. But if you can share where should people start looking for, and what should they start looking for if they want to consider? I mean, of course, buy the damn book.
So
but if you can give an overall.
What I did is I got an old full-size tower and an ancient CPU motherboard combination with a graphics card that was 10 years old. I didn't know if it was working or not. But the thing is once you build it, you no longer need a graphics card because all of your work done on it will be through your internal network, directly accessing it from your browser. So it has a built-in GUI. So you don't have to worry.
Which is just like Synology. Which is just like Synology
Absolutely.
or QNAP.
Exact same thing.
Right.
The one thing that I would recommend is to buy a $30, $40 hot swappable little case that you can slide into your full-size tower. It makes it so much easier to be able to hot swap and pull out drives. So let's say drive 4 is bad and it's blinking red. I can go click a button, pull the drive out, take another drive, let's say this bare bones, and let's say it was an 8 terabyte that was in there now, and I have a 6 terabyte. That's fine. I take this 6 terabyte, I stick it in there, I close it, and what it will do is it will rebuild the 6 terabyte and move the other 2 terabytes to another drive set. So it does it automatically for you, hot swappable. So that's what I would recommend. Even though you can build,
and you're recommending this. You're recommending this because otherwise, if you use a standard PC tower where you have to actually take off the casing to the tower, unscrew it's like a big process instead of versus just
the drive is out, stick a new drive in, and you're literally call it a day. And within a day, probably a day of processing behind the scenes, it will rebuild that drive just like new. It just makes everything a lot more simple. That would be my biggest suggestion. The entire operating system isn't even run on a hard drive at all. It's literally run on like a little drive like this, like a little stick. Yeah, little flash. You stick it into the back. Drive. You install the OS. The OS is based on a derivative of Linux. I am a Unix guy, so I appreciated that because it's very secure. And it's small. I mean, you get literally like a 4, like not even like just a tiny one, and it runs the entire OS. You stick it into the back, and that is it. You don't even need a hard drive in it for the OS. So it's 100%. The enclosure is for either parity or for your data, however you want. There's also another drive that you can use in there for speeding stuff up, but I won't get into that. I use an SSD for that. It's in the book.
Yeah,
it's
it's in the
basically
book.
for offloading. So when I'm sending stuff to it, it's capturing it onto this middle ground spot. And then as soon as that fills up, then it dumps it into the array, let's call it. So very, very simple. But that's what I would suggest.
Right.
But the parts themselves, I mean, literally use an old computer. And I'm not joking about that. This has been running now for 1 year. I think the last time I looked, it was like a year and 4 months, year and 5 months, with 0 errors. And it does a parity check on all the drives every 30 days. And as of today, keep knocking on wood here, 0 errors across all the drives with no problems at all. So very, very simple.
Yeah. I think you have a picture.
Let me see. Of the server? Yeah, let me see here. I know I do have a full parts list, and the thing is like I say, I give people the parts list, but I don't want to tell them, don't buy my parts because here's like what one of them looks like. I don't know if you can see it there. You see that, like just it's like a little. So this one is I think it was like a Cool Master or something like that. Yeah, I think it was a Cooler Master, I think it's called. But it doesn't really matter what you use. I would just use a large, a large full size tower, and then stick in those backup units. I mean the hot swappable units. I want to see if I can. Yeah, matter of fact, there's the hot swappable unit. It's right here on. Let me see which page. This is 33. You see that right there? That's the hot swappable unit. That thing right there has 4 drives. Yeah. You can get 2 of them and stick them in there, but that has 4 drives. You slide it in and you remove your other drives that are in there. And now you have 4 hot swappables and they plug straight in. So really, really super just simple. And what I did with the book, and this is what was really, important for me, is I was able to find a ton of information about Unraid, but it was like across an array of places, all kinds of, ideas and how to do it and everything. And then when it went to actually configuring the software, I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. So what I did with this book is I went step by step, literally like screen by screen,
screenshot
how to
everything.
do it. So by the time they're done, they literally have a server, a full backup, and that's it. They literally hit enter, their server comes up, and they can start just dumping files onto it, period. Yeah, it's literally screen by screen with with like little arrows, and I'm hand holding the whole way because that's what I want. Whenever I do any type of videos to try to educate on my channel, I always say, well, what would I need to know? And that's what I try to provide, as easy and as concise as possible. This book was going to be well in excess of about 140, 150 pages. And I ended up bringing it down to just under 100 pages because I just got rid of as much fluff as possible, tell you what I need to tell you, and just get it done. So you literally, like me, in one weekend, have this thing put together and you're dumping data to it, while you're sleeping, because it's going to take a while, as we know, moving the data across. So.
Right. Yeah. The last thing I would mention to everybody who's interested in building an Unraid server is Joseph's book has definitely made it easier for anybody to build their own Unraid server, because he's not only telling you what to get, but he's showing you how to set it all up, and he's doing it in a very easy way. But with that, there's a caveat. If you are not comfortable with computer parts, ask somebody for help. Just ask. If you've got a friend or family member who's good with computer stuff and you don't feel comfortable, they're going to help you. Tell them your reasoning. If somebody says no, they're not your friend. Right? I mean, come on. So
yeah. No, it's true. No, but you could, if you don't want to ask for help, and let's say you wanted to buy something, let's just say you can buy the cheapest computer that you can find out there. I don't care if it's AMD, Intel, I don't care what it is, just as long as it has a big tower. Buy a stick and now do the setup literally through the book yourself. And this way you don't have to deal with any hardware at all. And now the hardware is going to cost probably as much as an appliance, from one of the big companies out there. And now the thing is now you have the room to grow. And what people don't understand is when you buy an appliance that has 5 or it has 8 or it has 12, whatever it has, that is your limit. Once you get that full, you need to move to another appliance. When you deal with something like this, like you've seen, I'm sure online, there's people that have done unraids and server setups that have like 60 drives in them.
Yeah,
so
huge.
You can always just take, yeah, really. And you could just pull out that OS, stick it into the new setup, and it's like, oh, I remember that drive, and it just starts working again. Yeah. And it's just that simple to be able to move on. The other thing is like I was saying, when the hard drives get bigger, and when we were, let's say, at 8 terabyte, and now we're at 12 and 16 and 18, and it's going bigger and bigger and bigger. When we want to go and upgrade, and I want more storage, I'm going to go throw, let's say, an 18 terabyte priority, like a parity drive in there. Now I know that I can slowly buy up to 18 terabyte drives, pull out an 8, stick it in an 18, it rebuilds it. Pull out another 8, stick it in an 18, it rebuilds it. And then we go from like, let's say 32 or 40 or 50 terabytes to 100 terabytes, literally in a week's time of it just building itself back up. So it makes it very easy to upgrade also. Whereas a lot of times when you buy these appliances, it's like an end game. This is what you get. And when you fill it, you're done. And it's just like these big monstrosities of old. It's the same type of thing. When you fill it, now what do you do? And that's, and that's what I didn't want. I wanted something to be able to move on with and grow with, and then also have that security of having it local, not in the cloud, and then also the security of something that I built in comparison to buying something off the shelf. And then I don't know what ends up, what are they doing? Are they going to be around? Are they going to, sell it to a different company? Is the architecture going to change? And that's a big thing. If you have a RAID server that has a proprietary board in it, if you can't buy that board to read your data, you have no data because it doesn't understand it. Whereas with Unraid, I can literally take all the hard drives out of it right now, out of the RAID, stick it in your computer, and you'd be able to see everything that I have immediately.
Yeah,
that's the difference.
It's pretty.
So
it's pretty cool.
It's powerful.
Yeah. You've definitely inspired me to make the change. It's just a matter of time and money.
Yeah, right.
but I feel comfortable that like I've got a good backup system in place that I can take my time and do an Unraid server the right way, which is a nice thing. So
absolutely.
With that, I want to say thank you, Joseph, for joining me today. If you can tell the listeners, the viewers, the absolute best place to find more information about you, that'd be great.
Sure. What I did do, if you made it to the end of this video, which I hope everyone did, or audio, if you go to jchristina.com/books, you're going to find some of my ebooks there that are free. You're also going to find the prologue to this book, and it will give you the basic understanding of what we covered, but literally written in a PDF. You can download that for free. If you want to take the journey with me, then so be it. You can pick up the book from there. You can pick it up on Amazon or wherever. So jchristina.com/books, or just jchristina.com. You can see all the other products that I got over there. And of course, the YouTube channel over at youtube.com/jchristina. We have about 600 videos in this industry. It doesn't matter if it's photo, video, as well as tech, reviews, how-tos, commentary, all that kind of stuff. So you can find me over there too. So those are probably the two best ways.
So over the years, I've had the obviously the pleasure to get to know you, and to also
likewise
the cool. Yeah, the cool opportunities to try these innovations that you've come out with, like the sensor cleaner. I've had the opportunity not only use and review. So on my own personal YouTube channel, I've reviewed that. Of course, your new book and your lens calibration tool. So I love seeing what you come up with. I haven't tried your
appreciate
teas,
that.
but I am drinking tea right now.
Yep. We do have Dark Moon teas. That's, it's funny that you say that. Some of the people are always like, Joe, you're what is with this tea all the time? I'm like, I've been doing tea. I've been brewing tea. It's not brew, infusing, let's call it tea for so long, but more on a medicinal level, for health in comparison to just having like an Earl Grey or something. And people were like, can I get some of those? And that's when I came up with Dark Moon teas and put those out there for everyone. So over on the jchristina.com, you can find those too. But I do it for fun. But it is something that I still do, kind of like what do they say? The side hustle. I do make my teas. I've been doing those for a couple of years. It's fun. It definitely is fun. People love them. So, but yeah, I really want to. I gotta. Yeah, that's exactly. I love the Earl Grey, absolutely. But I do appreciate you. For over the years, you've definitely looked at a lot of the products that I've created. And I've been watching what you've been doing. What I've been doing. We've been going back and forth, and hopefully, when the industry maybe turns back around and we can have time again to be able to go to a lot of these shows that some of them have been closing, which has been a sad state of affairs. But once they're back and we can have time to be able to get together, hang out. Because that was my favorite thing to do, with you and all the rest of the creators out there and the people in the industry, photo, video, tech, whatever. It was always nice. And seeing that they've been shutting down all over the place. I remember Photokina when they finally went belly up, and a lot of other ones were still looking at Photo Plus Expo and WPPI in Las Vegas, doing those. And, at one time we were doing a podcast, if you remember, with Trevor Current for like 8 years, Digital Photography Cafe. And we were going live from WPPI and from Photo Plus Expo and all this stuff. And now look, it's like they don't even have them, or when they do have them, like there's no one there. So I just hope things get back.
You want to talk about change. When you guys were going live all the time, it was practically unheard of. And now everyone and their mother is going live.
Right.
It's like, it's amazing how just the world has changed over the years.
I know. It
so
is.
Cool,
it is.
But,
Well, like I said, thank you so much for having me. This was great. I really do appreciate you, appreciate what you're doing. And, I wish you the best going forward for sure.
Awesome. Thanks. You can find the show notes, where to find Joseph, at imagely.com/podcast/1/3. I'm going to do that again. You can find the show notes and where to find Joseph at imagely.com/podcast/132. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Google Play, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time.
You've been listening to the WordPress Photography Podcast. To listen to other episodes and to subscribe to the podcast via iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and more, please visit imagely.com/podcast.